So today is going to be a fun one. As you can see, I have 8 cordless caulk guns here in front of me, starting with the cheapest coming from Amazon with the Dana, all the way up here to the M18 Milwaukee from Home Depot. So I did put some of the basic information here in this table. Some of you guys might be interested in where it's made. The Dewalt is actually assembled here in the USA, made with global materials, as they like to say. Ridgid, Vietnam, and Makita, Japan, with the rest, of course, made in China. First up here is going to be charge time. So all the batteries have been drained down. Let's go ahead and get them on the charger. Charge time, I mean, really nothing way out of the ordinary here. You know, Milwaukee coming in first, Ryobi right behind them, Dewalt, Makita. Now, again, this was with a 2 amp hour battery to keep everything fair. So I did, of course, get the max dB of the caulk guns under load, with the Ridgid being the quietest and the Makita being the loudest. But all in all, you know, they're not that far off. So if the width of the unit is your concern, the actual shortest is the Dianamix here from Amazon, of course, then the Dewalt. So the only reason the Kobalt is a little wider is because of these bumpers. Same thing here on this Milwaukee. And then we have the M12 Milwaukee, the Makita, Ridgid, and last coming in with the Ryobi. Okay, so I'm going to cut this in the same spot on every tube, right at the top there. Now it is set on 1, so we'll go ahead. For each gun here, I went ahead and I dispensed 1 caulk tube on low and then 1 caulk tube on high. That way it'll give you guys a ballpark of, well, I'm looking for one that'll dispense real slow, or I'm looking for one that'll dispense real high. So you can see here the slowest is the M18. So if you're looking for something to be really slow, that's going to be that one. And then on the high end, you know, it was kind of mid-range there at 18 seconds. Now, if you want something that's extremely fast to dispense, I would say look at the Makita. I mean, on high, 6 seconds. Extremely fast. And even on low, we're talking 1 minute and 53 seconds. The Dianamix, I mean, yeah, it has speed adjustment, but you can see low and high really pretty close. To me here, you want the biggest range, and the biggest range is the M18. So I made this little rig up here. Of course, we got a hydraulic cylinder in the center here, 1-inch bore diameter. Now this will sit directly right in the caulk tube, and then I can attach it on the front side here with these washers. So now I've got her set to PSI here. Now this will give us the max reading at the bottom of the gauge here. So 256 max on low. .818. So went ahead here, I tested each one with my custom hydraulic tester, and this is what I ended up with. Surprisingly, the Ryobi made way more than what they claim, and the Makita made well under the claim, so over half. I don't know what the deal is there. I went back, retested, same results. So now on the top end, it was basically between the Dianamix and the M18, with the M18 inching out, of course, #1 spot. Also, I tested them on low, and here you can see that in blue as well. Now again, we failed with the Ridgid, so I wasn't even able to make it to this step to be able to test it. So if we talk a little bit about cost here, you can see I broke this down between tool cost and then if you bought it in a kit. Ryobi was the cheapest tool cost wise, with Dianamix being the cheapest kit wise. Now on the upper end, of course, kit wise, Milwaukee M18 was the most expensive. So we have to talk about the two that didn't make it first. Ridgid here, you know, I ran 2 tubes and then I couldn't pull the handle back. Ended up having to actually unscrew the tube holder off here to get the tube out. And yeah, I could not get this handle to retract. So I pulled it apart, and on inspection, you have this switch right here, which is supposed to stop, you know, the arm from going any farther in. I would assume release the tension. Well, it bypassed that and went straight on in, so it is definitely stuck in the housing here. So I'm waiting for Ridgid to get back to me on this. I'll do an update if I end up with a replacement. We'll test it, see if I get the same results there. But for now, we're going to have to shelf this as a loss. Overall, again, price-wise, it seemed pretty reasonable. But 2 caulk tubes in, it's down. Little different story here with the Dianamix. It ran through the 2 caulk tubes there fine. When we went to run the test, that's when we ran into some problems. There was a little snappy sound. I shook the gun, you could hear metal. So I pulled it apart, and what I found is the plastic housing here cracked, and we have teeth missing off of the drive gear. I will say that's one thing I didn't like about this right off the bat, is how much play there is right here in this arm. I'm guessing that's what partially led to the failure here. Like the Ridgid, waiting to hear back. The claim is submitted, so we'll see what happens. So if we break these down in 2 groups, first off here with the Dewalt, I'm going to put it as last for a couple reasons. One, performance was decent. I will give it that. But the price to me is a little outrageous for the performance. Also, I'm going to tell you, I do not like this whole double trigger mechanism here, where you got to pull this trigger to then release the tension to pull back and, of course, replace the tube. And it is assembled in the USA with global materials. So overall, if you're running the Dewalt platform, I would have to recommend it. But again, just remember, it's kind of pricey at the upper end. Kobalt, you know, we're looking at $120 for the tool. If you're running the Kobalt platform, I'd say it's worth a shot. Force-wise, it will get the job done. It is. I didn't seem to find it right at what they claimed, but it definitely seems to be a decent gun. And just like the Dewalt, you know, you have your holder here so you can hang it on the 2x4 or wherever. Definitely a different design with a screw style versus a rack and pinion drive there. So who knows how that's going to hold up over time. But you also do have that release here again to use. Makita, I just didn't like the results. They claimed 1,100, couldn't even get anywhere near it. Definitely has a very high dispense rate. If you're looking for a really high dispense, you know, that's something to consider there. But to be able to pull this rod back, go forward, not have to monkey with another trigger, to me, that's a big deal. Now they do also offer this in 18 volt. I tested it in 12. The tool itself is supposed to be the same. So I am going to give the Milwaukee M12 here 3rd place. Biggest thing I don't like about it is you do have to have the selector, of course, in the safety mode to be able to retract. Not a real big deal, but it's something to definitely consider. So just keep that in mind. Decent performance, lightest, and overall, you know, doable on expense-wise. Not the greatest, but of course not the most expensive out there. Ergonomics is a little bit weird with all this weight up on top. And it can be a little weird maneuvering between this lock unlock. We have the holder for our 2x4 to hang it from. We have the battery indicator, speed adjustment. Yes, it's made in China, but it seems to be pretty good quality. So second place, going to give it to the M18. It's the heaviest, but out of all of the caulk guns, it produces the most force. If you're going for max force, definitely if you're using those Sika adhesive anchoring tubes, you know what I mean? Some of you guys that the tubes have those dual bags inside, and then you're forcing those together through a mixing tube. It takes a lot of force. So if you're doing something like that, I'm going to tell you, you're going to want this Milwaukee. Other features, yeah, no second button. So you can easily pull this back and go. But you can see we don't have the holder there, you know, to rest it on a 2x4, 2x6, whatever. So just keep that in mind there. But it is an easy to use, easy to grab here, handle and go. Speed adjustment on the side there, and a safety similar to the M12. Another thing to point out with the M18 that's really cool is you insert the caulk tube here, and it is spring loaded to the front of the holder. So the rod is fully back and it's not holding the tube in. It's actually to do with this mechanism right here. We'll get the tube back out. You can see it's like a spring base there, and it's got a little lip on it. That's what grabs this caulk tube, holds it, forces it to the front. Pretty cool. You know, if we were to do that here with the Ryobi, you can see we could potentially lose the caulk tube out of the gun. Just another cool feature there. Yes, the gun is the most expensive, but you can see you get a little more with that extra money. Number one, though, to me, is this Ryobi. Yes, it's definitely quite wide, but overall, I don't think you can beat it. I mean, it runs right up there in the amount of force it applies. It's the cheapest tool on its own at $50. I don't think you can beat it. And then the rod takes a little bit of force to move, but you don't have to play around with that second button. Now, it's kind of based off an old design. You know, we do have this steel frame here, and from what I've found, it really doesn't like those Sika tubes I talked about, mainly because most caulk tubes have a lip right here, because that's where this metal holder sits right into. Now, when we're talking about those Sika tubes, they are completely flat. So if you're worried about the caulk tube dripping, some have auto reverse. That's going to be the Dewalt, Kobalt, and Milwaukee here. Basically, you can see that as we were feeding there, and then it automatically reversed a little bit. So these three have it. The other three here, Makita, Ryobi, and the M18, actually just release the tension on the tube. So what will happen is, as it drives forward there, it takes the tension off the bar. So you can see the tension is fully off the bar. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. So there you have it. It really depends on what platform you're currently running. All seem to be fairly decent, but if you want the top performer, you're going to have to go with the M18. If you're looking for the best bang for your buck, you're going to have to go with the Ryobi. Middle of the road, M12 is definitely a good option. And then if some of you guys are out there running Dewalt, yes, it works. Just be prepared to spend the money and deal with the second trigger. Kobalt, decent gun for the money. If you're running Kobalt, yeah, I don't see any problem there. And Makita, I like the design. Didn't see it really with the amount of force. So I don't know what's going on, but yeah, I don't think it would have a problem with regular caulk tubes. You just don't expect for the performance that they're claiming, at least not from my tests. So that's got to be pretty much it. Again, they all have safety triggers there if you need to lock it out for any reason. And they all have variable speed adjustment. I will say, if somebody's redesigning one of these, put the speed adjustment so you can get to it with one hand. I think definitely this day and age, pick one up. A lot better than using a mechanical caulk gun. That being said, we'll check back with Ridgid and Dianamix, and if I get new ones in, we'll run through the test again, see what happens. But for now, that's where I'm going to leave it, with my pick being the Ryobi. If you're looking for the links, they'll be in the description below. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the video.